things to be off of top screen. And hello, everybody! Welcome to Discussing Tabletop. I'm hoping I sound... I didn't test it. Let me test it. I'm going to echo myself. That sounds fine. Yes. I didn't do that earlier. So now everybody can enjoy a little bit of backup. It is November 4th, 2023. Hey! We reached November. We're alive.
My brain thought it is. I thought my brain was thinking it was November 2nd or something. That was 2 days ago.
Well, we got daylight savings tomorrow, or one of the things where it's just gonna fuck with the schedule completely.
We enter daylight time. I'm ready for chronic pain for a week because that's what this does every time. It just infuriates my chronic health issues. And when are we getting rid of it, America? Come on. Despite the fact that like 80% of people want this to go away, like it's failed in like legislation like twice.
There's a lot of reasons deeply behind it, and it really comes down to stupidity. But you know what? I don't want to get like my anger at a lot of stuff that we can get conversations that I'm very upset usually with the government a lot of times.
This is not a political podcast.
Yes, this is a tabletop podcast, which doesn't mean it can't get political, but we're getting political related to tabletop. Thank you very much.
Like Wizards. Wizards is very political right now.
Wizards! Anyway, so we do have a bunch of topics today. We're going to be talking about a little bit about the Starfinder surveys and some things that are going on with the Starfinder 2nd edition tests. There is a Pathfinder board game that is done by Steve Jackson Games. We're getting some Diablo coming to tabletop. We've got a couple of what I call Wizards Entertainment and Investment Update, because it was a bunch of like smaller update stories that I'm combining together to talk all about. One of them, we've got a 80s TTRPG for Ninja Turtles coming back to Kickstarter. I've got an honorable mention because I found out about this and it was already done, but I want to mention it because it's cool, which involves a giant miniature. We got some Modiphius tabletop RPGs, some stuff from Renegade. Roll20's got a Humble. We're going to talk about a Munchkin that's both Steve Jackson games and not. We'll talk about it. And Warren brought me a Traveler topic to talk about, so we'll chat some topics. Traveler.
That's the system I've been really working with a lot lately, so I'm pretty on top of it.
I mean, I have a link to their site. It's just I never can understand their like chart of like, these are the updates, and I'm like, great, thanks. What does this all mean?
See, here's the thing. Like, the most annoying part about their update system is that it says out. Like, you have to basically know what things have not yet been released, because they just update it to out now, and then it stays out now until probably their next year when they update their release schedule announcements. So, it's basically like, out now, unless you realize that it was different before, or that it wasn't out before. So the only reason I'm able to understand it is because I'm kind of on top of it, because I'm very curious about all of it right now.
Mm-hmm. You're in a position where you might understand it more, which is helpful.
But also, they don't give links to their stuff when they're out, which they really should. They really should just say that out now and post a link that you can click on with out now. Because I don't know why they don't.
Reasons.
Maybe I'll send them an email recommending it.
Send them an email telling them, please get your things working correctly and stop being silly. But anyway. So, yes, we have a bunch of topics to dive into, so why don't we get started on those? As I was saying, first one is the If you didn't know, I was restarting a bunch of stuff, so now I can finally pop out chat and give chat the links and stuff too. Since I noticed that finally loaded up. Anyway, here's just a thing. We're getting the third, what they call field test for Pathfinder or some Starfinder 2nd edition, and this is an interesting one because they are asking for people to take a vote. They're like, hey, we're going to bring some of the ancestries forward from there, one of the big things about Starfinder is I haven't updated the docket. I haven't.
Oh.
That. So that's
I was like, oh, you haven't posted it yet.
Yeah. I hadn't updated it. I can do that now. It'll take a second. Again, a little behind the scenes, I had to reload a bunch of stuff because I was like, both Discord and Firefox, who I use, both wanted updates. Meaning, when they want updates, they start eating up memory until be like, restart me. And I like was gonna start like OBS, and I like to check stuff, and I'm like, oh, things are working a little slow. What? Oh, you want to restart to update a bunch of stuff. Oh, great. Thank you. You don't like put a thing on the screen. Please restart me now. You go, hey, you know what? Your memory? You don't want that anymore on your computer. It's both of them too. That's the problem. It's both of them. Anyway, Starfinder. Yes. That's a complaint. We have an entire thing where they are going to be, if you want a specific... okay, I'm remembering what I was saying now. One of the big things about Starfinder is they do have a huge selection of various alien creatures and species you can play. The entire idea is... well, I guess that is a big chunk of the idea. So, with such a selection, there are a lot of favorites between people. And they have basically said, like, hey, vote on this. Whichever ones you vote will, do for the playtest. So you can check them out early.
Which I'm assuming the dragon people.
They might not have them on their current list here, just because...
If they don't, then I'm not voting. Otherwise, I'll vote.
I can't remember off the top of my head, because honestly, there is so many of the alien races. Like, I think that's the big thing about it. Alright. Everything functioning correctly? Good. Good. I mean, like, there's androids, Bratharu, human,
There's called Dragonkin.
Yeah, the Dragonkin aren't on here right now.
I don't care then.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let people vote for who they want.
I think these are the ones that are from, like, the original, like, book, and a couple other ones that have become more popular. But, I mean, like, they have, like, their bestiary books, which are called Alien Archives, also oftentimes include a large number of playable aliens in them. A lot more than the bestiaries ever had playable species. It is impressively a lot more. And they're much more open for playing very unusual stuff, which I think will be really good with bringing in some of that Pathfinder 2nd Edition stuff, how it makes it even more easy to play unusual creatures. So I think that will make it that there will be so much more explosion of weird alien ideas and creatures you can just play in Starfinder, which I think is one of their heavy moments, or good abilities. So, yeah. If you're interested in voting on this to see what comes out first, I assume we'll see a lot more. They'll probably do a lot more books and stuff. This is just the beginning of the field test, as they call them, and this is another one. So,
yeah. Interested. So they got most of the, like, original, so, like, the core species that they had, and then they have, like, a few others.
Yeah. And they put a few versatile heritages, because I think that makes sense, because that's a thing that they've expanded upon more in 2nd edition, so it's a good idea to have that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, there is another Pathfinder topic, but it's Pathfinder by way of Steve Jackson Games. But it's also highly appropriate, because it's Pathfinder Revolution, where the city of Corvosa is having a revolution. You don't say! I didn't even know this was coming out, and it's the week we start.
Okay, wait, hold on. For for that glorious SEO, you're gonna have to name one of your videos like when we hit the point of like something starts. You have to say Pathfinder Revolution or something like that, or the Revolution in Corvosa or something. You know, just for that SEO. Just saying. Sometimes you gotta think of that.
Yeah, it's also a really big game. It's a $60 game, which means it's sort of like it's got maps, scores, bid boards, player screens, influence cubes, tokens, rule sheet. So it's basically, I guess, you're influencing the various peoples and guilds of Corvosa, using gold, power, blackmail, to try to get it on your side, and basically, it's intrigue. I guess it's the silent revolution kind of thing, where you're trying to be like the power in the background, I guess, more than anything, and break the influence of all your fellow players. That's what I pick up from checking it out. And it's based on the original Revolution game, which is something that Steve Jackson Games had done. I forgot all about there was the original Revolution until I saw it mentioned right now in this entire thing. I'm like, oh yeah, that was a thing.
There's another Pathfinder board game I ran into trying to look this one up.
I don't know if it's new or old, because I know they're doing a lot more new stuff nowadays. But
sorry, that was a card game. Probably heard about that.
Yeah.
There's a Pathfinder card game. So it does have like a map and stuff. Come on. Rise of the Rune Lord.
Oh, Rise of the Rune Lord. Yeah. I've heard that one. I can't remember much about it. Because that one has been a little while for that one.
Anyway, it's 2013, though.
Yeah. Oh, that's the card game! It's the Pathfinder card game, which they did for a bunch of them. I just remembered it. Like, you mentioned that, and then I remembered it, actually, where it's based on the adventure paths. It's like a card game you play with other people. That's a little like Castle Ravenloft board game, except you're running through the adventure path in a card game format.
Got it.
They're very interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, so there have been some board games who made that one.
Yeah. I mean, again, like, this is based on a existing version of a game, Revolution, that Steve Jackson Games done before, with a Pathfinder spin and veneer on top, which isn't necessarily bad, but I did find it honestly ironic that, we're starting the Curse of the Crimson Queen, or the Crimson Crimson Throne adventure path with my Crimson Queen show this week, and then I noticed this came out. It's set in Corvosa.
Yep.
It was just like this. It's a funky coincidence I just enjoyed, very much so. We do have some more topics to talk about, though, and I will link.
Oh, I see. So it's a Pathfinder version of Revolution.
Yeah, it's a Pathfinder version of Revolution. Who is doing this? And sometimes some of these places do not have great links to the things that I'm trying to look up.
Yeah, that's something that's hard sometimes, is actually finding a link that makes sense. I mean, sometimes it's a leak.
Yeah. But anyway, on just linking it for, I guess, Dice Breakers, because I can't find the original stuff where they came up with the information from it.
It's a comprehensive article. Go ahead.
I use the articles when I can only use the articles, but I like to go to the original source when I can, because it's topics we can talk about. It's interesting to see that we're getting a Diablo board game and a Diablo tabletop RPG. And the thing is, I'm not against this necessarily, but I also know that the current Diablo 4, hasn't gone really well. It had a very good beginning showing, but their seasonal thing seems to have killed it. And I'm going to tell you, this for me personally, I played some Diablo 3. I like Diablo 3 for a little bit. but the grind even on Diablo 3 was bad. You know how we got through the Mountain Vine? Blaze figured out a way to cheat. He did. He basically, to not explain it, there was ways of, like, manipulating your save on the PS3 in order to basically, like, copy stuff over and just, send expensive things to players and stuff so they get a lot of upgrades. And it was a save manipulation in order to cheat the system in Diablo 3. And we made that more fun for the late game stuff because it really sucked otherwise. Anyway, that's why I was never going to really touch Diablo 4. I looked at it and said, like, I'm not really feeling it. Diablo 3, kind of like... I understand people love even more Diablo 2 in the original, Those are the big ones. But...
yeah.
The IP itself isn't bad. But
I've heard that the Diablo world is actually quite fascinating.
And I think that's the thing that might work here.
Yeah. So, honestly, expanding it in this way might be good. Do they have books? This is one of those things that has books.
I don't know. It seems
yes,
like I don't know.
Are.
Glass Cannon Unplugged, which I think did I guess did the Dark Souls RPG adaptation. Let me just make sure. Glass Cannon. I can spell this. Cannon Unplugged. Board Game Studio. They do a lot of really heavy licensed stuff, it looks like.
There are apparently about 20 books in Diablo. Yeah, so it's one of those things that actually has a pretty good, like, lore and universe. Yeah, I've heard Diablo 4 is basically, it's one of those games that's, like, built around, that was originally built around microtransactions.
Okay, so Glass Cannon Unplugged, the three other games they're known for before now were the video game-based RPG, or board games, not RPGs. The Frostpunk one, Dying Light, and the Apex Legends board game. I think I talked about maybe the Frostpunk, maybe the Apex Legends one. I don't know if I talked about the Dying Light one on the show. So this is stuff that we've seen before from them. At least I've heard of at least those two. And now they're doing the Diablo RPG and board game. For planning for 2024.
The one that got really bad. Sorry, I was just like, there's some really bad update video or something on it.
I don't know.
Memory, but that's like such a vague term that I'm like,
the Diablo 4 stuff is just such a apparent like shit show from the way they did stuff. Like I heard like when they were doing a new season of stuff, you had to do an entirely new character, which turned a lot of people off. You couldn't like there was no reset for your current character or any kind of thing like that. It was like, no, you had to start a new one entirely, and all the stuff you had done before for the previous season of stuff doesn't matter. Yeah. It was really bad ideas, it sounded like. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that could be good if you could, like, save your old character for something else or something, but...
If you could, like... Yeah, like, it just...
or even just, start your character over, or, I don't know.
If there was some kind of... Yeah, there's so many ways that it could have sounded be done better, but... Anyway. Glass Cannon's got some, like, IP-related stuff. I don't know how much I can say, because they only have 3 other board games, so, I mean, the Diablo board game, I'm feeling best about that, but the Diablo RPG, I don't know. Okay, so they're doing a unique rule set for it, I see, is what they're doing, rather than something like the, some things that are based on the 5e framework. Like the Dark Souls RPG was based on the 5e framework.
I mean, yeah, there's lots of unique stuff. Like, I mean, there's so many RPGs.
Again, like
5e framework. But there's
again,
also a lot that kind of do it too. So, well, there's just some that do the D&D framework in general.
If they're doing their own thing, great. I just, it's still sort of like, for me, it's an unproven studio when it comes to RPGs, not board games, doing an RPG, and not only doing an RPG, doing an RPG with its own unique system, which means I'm probably more speculative of it, but it doesn't mean it was not going to be good. I'm just going to wait till it's out before, like, you know, figuring out more stuff. I'll link their site to Glass Canyon. People can see their stuff. So it might be really cool. Again, I did like the parts of the lore that I hit into. I'm a lore fan from Diablo 3. I didn't go as deep into it, but it's an interesting world. I'm hoping that they can capture it. You know, taking these IPs to something like an RPG wouldn't necessarily be bad. But
yeah. But it will be hard, because, like, Diablo is based around, like, what's funny is, like, a 5e framework for Dark Souls honestly sounds less useful than, like, it does for Diablo, because Diablo is very class-based.
And Diablo is, that's the thing, is Diablo is very heavy combat. Like, there is some, like, story bits, but it's so very heavy, and horde-based combat is what it particularly does, pretty much. And I'm curious if you could capture that feeling in an RPG very easily and not feel overwhelmed. Or bored with it. Because, honestly, if I'm playing an RPG, do I want to fight 100 mooks before fighting a boss? Not really! I don't know, maybe it could be done, but it has to be done right. And I guess it's like, the gameplay capturing that is very difficult. If they ignore the gameplay and just go for the world, that's fine too, but...
That's probably what they'll do. That's what most things do.
Yeah. Well, like, I know, like, Dark Souls, from what I know about it, it does do things that make it feel more like Dark Souls, with, like, you know, a rebirth kind of situation, like a system in place if you die and stuff, and it's a little bit more deadly and things like that. So they have mechanics in place that make it feel more Dark Souls.
That's
without
also very
being
much
the exact same.
Except that's also very much the lore of the world. So, like,
true.
I mean, in Dark Souls, it's very much like, you die, you come back some X amount of time later, generally unknown, back at where you last, like, remembered counting as your home. You know, it's like, that's kind of the lore.
Yeah, it's death is not a permanent thing. But again,
with that being said, though, there are mortals in Dark Souls. Not necessarily in it.
And even in Diablo, like, it's not necessarily fighting the hordes all the time, like, but I feel like that is the entire thing of this. It's like, it's a lot of times the storylines involve mass invasions of, you know, demonic forces against wherever you're at. Yeah, so I'm just curious how they're going to handle it, you know?
Yeah, but, like, again, I mean, you could have, like, a 4E system of mooks where it's all, like, one-hit kills. So as long as you hit, you kill, you know?
Yeah.
So, there's ways to do it.
So, there were 3 articles that were on Dicebreakers, all related to Hasbro and Wizards. I did want to mention and talk about some stuff related to them. We'll start with the first one, which is the probable one that, you know, any of us that have a sense of wanting things to be good, not probably going to be happy about. Because, once again, Hasbro is doing good because of 2 things. Magic, and this quarter, Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, I did read an article about that.
So they're doubling down on more stuff like that. Woo-wee!
Yeah, more, which is funny, because I also read at the beginning of the year, they were like, oh yeah, we're going to move away from video games. They canceled a bunch of video game related products.
Well, the thing is, without that, Hasbro wasn't in the red, but it wasn't like a huge gain. It was kind of, it very much, Hasbro for everything else, it sounds like, as the company stands, it's very stagnant. Which isn't technically bad, but in the ideas of investors, is. You know.
So what's funny is actually, in trying to look up things about it, I actually ran into their 3rd quarter financial report. They only made like $5,000. Hasbro itself made like $5,000 in the 3rd quarter.
which isn't a lot, Again,
it's really not for a giant company.
It paid for all its people. It got all its
Yeah.
things out. It's like all the bills were done. They just did not have a lot of overreaching profit to reinvest in anything. They kept basically the same, which again, in any sane society, I would really say is the bottom layer you want to be at, and then you want to start going above it. And yes, a little bit of growth would be great, but, when you're doubling down on, hey, Magic and Dungeons & Dragons with things like Baldur's Gate 3 were these big profit things that actually gave us money, let's do more of that stuff. And I'm like, you're not gonna be great. I just feel like it's not gonna go well because of the way that, I think we've talked about it how, and plenty of other people have, Magic's on this cusp of, they could go too much on their products and stuff very easily. They're a lot right now. I can't keep up with it. Certainly, it's scared me out of, buying most of their products. I used to try to buy all the Magic products. I haven't done that for years now at this point in time. If I get a couple of, boxes of cards a year, if there's, sets that I really want to get some cards from, that's what I do nowadays. You also have to sell me on the sets a lot more. It's a lot harder to do that, but...
Yeah. I just find it funny that they're like, we're gonna do more stuff like Magic and Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm like, it was funny because it's literally there's an article that came out early this year, if I remember correctly, which was like, we're gonna stop doing video games, they're not working out.
Mm-hmm.
But Baldur's Gate 3 was already in the process and they weren't gonna cancel it.
And the thing is, I think what people, what most people have kind of settled upon is Baldur's Gate 3 is this weird combination of things of right time, right place, right people, right investments, all these things. It would not be easy to recreate something like a Baldur's Gate 3.
Unless you pay Lorien just to make another one.
I mean, even then, it's a lot of situations, because would they give Lorien enough time to make something else?
I think Olirant would have enough leeway to basically say, hey, we will need more than that if they go under. Oliriant's not dumb. They're actually pretty good company, so...
Again, it comes down to, yes, Larian's the people that, if you would convince them to do it, but I don't know if they'd want to do, another big game like that. There's so many questions about that, so, I don't know.
You didn't post a link. I had my own article, so...
Oh, yeah. Here, I'll give the Dicebreakers one, because I'll give these 3 articles from Dicebreakers that are all very interesting related to the, stuff that, Hasbro and Wizards are doing that both are, make me kind of shake my head and also go, well, it's a thing. So, yeah.
That's actually the one I found. Same article. Okay, yeah.
Following up on that, we do have 2 other things I want to mention related to their expansion into entertainment, because that includes Baldur's Gate 3. We have 2 other things that I saw articles for that I want to talk about. First off is, there's an animated Netflix Magic the Gathering show that apparently, I had heard about this, but apparently it was almost dying, but still exists. I guess because of, the writers and, people like that going on strikes, it probably didn't do a good job for this entire thing. But it was going to be on Netflix. And I forgot about this because it was 2 years ago they talked about it. And it was apparently mentioned in the investors meeting that they had recently. So it is still a thing. I don't know what's going on with it. It's interesting that they're still doing it. I guess. Maybe?
Anyone just still lives. Oh, okay. Yeah, so they're...
Yeah.
So apparently, I didn't even know this was a thing.
Again, I forgot about it because it was a couple of years ago that they talked about it last, really. And after a couple of years, that's quite a bit of time to be like, well, we haven't said anything about it. Yeah, it was first announced mid-2019.
Okay, no, that explains everything. I mean, mid-2019 and the pandemic happened.
Yeah, well, again, there's a lot of stuff that's happened over the years that have kind of, had some trouble with stuff, and, I feel like it is a good world, like,
I would
Magic's
actually like
lore is good. Like, that's why I think, like, I talk about this, but even Forgotten Realms and D&D lore is good for things. Look at the D&D movie. It didn't do, I guess, I don't know how well it did overall, but it didn't do, I guess, what they wanted, but it still was relatively successful. And for those of us that, are fans and like that kind of thing, we're like, yeah, that's a pretty good job of actually capturing the world and showing kind of things of, like, the lore and stuff, and an interesting lore you've been developing. And Magic has pretty interesting worlds that they only kind of explore a lot of times, and you have to kind of, like, fill in gaps. And sometimes they do, like, little stories or comics or stuff to expand upon things, and something like this would probably be really interesting and could expand upon this kind of, like, lore very interestingly, and these stories. But I don't know.
Yeah. Honestly, like I was trying to say, I really do like the idea of that being a movie, because I actually do like what little of the Magic the Gathering lore I've seen. I actually think it's quite fascinating. I actually should at some point read up on it. I think it'd be fun to also maybe put something like in a world with that or something, but or do like a game or world, because I know they have the role playing game thing where they put the world and D&D thing in it and mix them a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall though, so I think it'd be cool. I think you're right. Magic has very interesting lore. I think it's one of those things that's, like, kind of overlooked, though, for the most part. Do they have books?
They used to have a lot more novels and stuff. They used to have novels in the early days, and then they switched to having, like, short stories up on the Wizard's site. Then they tried novels again, but the novels didn't go over well because they did some very questionable writing in them. This was the entire time where they basically... Okay, short story on that one. Two of the characters, Chandra and Nisa, in a relationship. They were both women. They wrote in the book and destroyed that entirely in a very, very bad way.
Okay.
And basically, like, made it kind of like, oh, it was just experimentation for Chandra or something like that, not a serious relationship. And, like, the kind of thing that, people, like, it was not good writing. Yeah. But that kind of destroyed their novel series because they did that, and that novel went over really badly when they were trying to get...
Sorry, you can finish, but I'm trying to remember something, so...
Yeah. It was like... It was less that, like, it could have just been, like, a fling, or Sandra would have just been, like, bisexual or something. It's just the way that it was written. I'm not going to quote it all because it's been a lot of years now. Was very insulting to people of, the LGBTQ plus community. I never remember how to remember all the letters in there. I'm very bad at remembering anything. Anyway, so the novel series died with that, and they went back to short stories now. So there are short stories, like the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. There's a series of short stories up on their thing that tell the story, the set, kind of, basically.
Yeah. So there is a thing that happens in novels and stuff where, like, when when readers try and, like, ship people or do things like that, there are certain types of people that just hate that so much that they will specifically, like, after they find out about it, I don't know, like, was it like,
what happened was it was an established relationship between the cards and lore on the cards, like quotes on the cards.
Okay.
They were actually in a relationship and stuff, and, like, artwork depicted them, like, hugging and stuff like that, and, like, having this relationship. And the short stories established them having a relationship. And then the novel came out, and it just was like, it's gone.
Yeah, no, it does sound like there are certain people who are just, like, either... There are people, I mean, it could also have been written by someone who hates that kind of stuff, But there's also people who just dislike the idea of shipping people, and so it's like, I'm gonna make the decision on what they do.
Well, I think it was less than shipping. It was a pre-established lesbian relationship that they basically wrote out of existence in one novel.
It sounds like it was either they hired someone to write something that was like, that person was probably just not a good pick. Either because they didn't like the stuff, or stuff.
I don't know if we ever got answers to why that was written in there like that and stuff like that. It could have just been they wanted to have their relationship break up because a lot of shit had happened in the storyline, But the way it was written wasn't great. I think it's sort of like you can have them break up, but and that was I think we talked about that back in the day.
I'm just saying like certain things. I'm like. There were some theories I could think of, but without.
But we talked about it back in the day. But the entire result of it was that the Magic community as a whole, which kind of was pretty accepting of that kind, was sort of like, what the fuck did you do? The novel tanked, and therefore the entire novel series, which was like 3 into re-coming back, the first 2 sold well, died. Because it did so poorly. And there was such a backlash.
Yeah. Anyway.
So they haven't had a novel series since then. Anyway. I think there's a lot more details to the entire story, but we talked about it years ago on the show and stuff. Anyway, there is one more thing now, which I forgot kind of about that this was happening, but it's apparently starting later this month, and that is the D&D TV show kind of stuff that they were planning on doing. Do you remember us talking about that?
Vaguely.
Where they were going to have a cooking show and some, like, live plays of D&D and stuff on, like, a television network kind of thing, or streaming. Apparently it's starting, soon.
I mean, live play sounds fun.
Yeah.
I don't know what cooking has to do with any of this.
It's its own fast channel.
Creating dishes from D&D's official cookbooks. D&D has official cookbooks?
Yes, they've had it over the years. It is like silly stuff, but they basically take like the idea of fantasy foods and make like a real version of them.
Oh yeah, Dungeon Master Drink Drink Master's Guide. I've heard of that one.
Mm-hmm.
This is weird. I didn't realize this was a thing. That's hilarious. Okay.
So they're getting apparently like 3 weekly series streaming to channels starting November 13th. Because its launch date for its free ad supported TV channel. It's fast channel. So we know we're gonna get some stuff there. We know we're gonna have like the old animated D&D show will show up there. 2 actual plays, the cooking show, maybe more stuff. I don't know. It's interesting. We're actually going to see what this means, this channel. I guess also, like, some playthroughs of Baldur's Gate 3 is kind of mentioned, maybe.
Kind of interesting that they're doubling down on entertainment, because actually what I saw in that report that I mentioned is that their entertainment's actually the thing that's actually costing them more than it's making them.
Well, the question is it something like the D&D movie, which did make some profit, but not like a huge amount of profit? Or is it something like their animated shows that they do for like... Are they still doing My Little Ponies? That would be one that I'd point out, because that's under Hasbro.
A good point. You're right. You're right. Because this is all Hasbro and entertainment. There are a lot of shows that probably aren't doing well. And that probably doesn't count.
Yeah, like
because I know the D&D movie did all right. It didn't do amazingly for a box office film, but it was considered successful.
Yeah.
It may have hurt the chances of it getting a sequel, but I also know that like it's expected to do well when it comes out on, or if it has already come out somewhere else. I think like Paramount.
Probably like Blu-ray home sales /
I'm saying like streaming. I think it's Paramount. Paramount's the one right?
Oh yeah, Paramount. It's supposed to be good on streaming.
There's Paramount Plus. Yeah, Paramount Plus is streaming.
Yeah, I forgot that Paramount Plus would have it. Yeah, that's right. I'd heard that was the one that was getting counted. But I don't know. They talked about this some months ago, and, I just don't know how well I don't know much about fast channels, is the thing, too. Because they're not... Are they TV or not really TV? Are they a streaming thing? What...
What's a fast channel?
It says free ad-supported TV. That's what FAST stands for. Let me take a look up what fast channels in general.
So it's a streaming service type. It's a type of streaming service. Basically, it's a free streaming service that uses ads. So, YouTube. Basically, YouTube is an example of fast.
Okay. It would be also like Amazon's Freevee, Roku channel, Samsung's TV Plus, LG channels, Paramount's Pluto TV, Fox's Tubi. I've heard of Tubi.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's kind of like a bit of TV, but on the internet.
Yeah. So, yeah. Interesting. So they're kind of doing their own little, like, streaming ad TV thing. So, again, I don't know much about, like, this entire thing. It seems like everything they're putting on it, at very least, seems simple. Like, it's some, live plays, a cooking show, repeats of an animated show that they have, and maybe some more stuff that they'll include in the future, as they do more things.
Critical Role, Dimension 20, another D&D podcast.
The question is, how many of them are they willing to pay to put on there, too? Because Critical Role is pretty successful on its own at this point in time.
Attempt to recreate their own versions of these. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, they want to make... Sorry, I was very confused because it just started the sentence with actual play series. Which I'm like, wait, are they going to show it? Oh, no. They're going to try and make their own. Okay.
They want to basically... Yeah.
Honestly, though, if they can do it well... Because here's the thing, like, there's some really cool aspects to those shows which can be done fairly well. In fact, like, if you get a little bit of production value in there, and not even a lot, you can get some really cool stuff. Like, I loved... I watched something for the Dimension 20 before the pandemic hit, which was like Dimension High or something, I think it was called. Anyway, but it was really cool because like during their fights, they had these really cool like boards that people made, and I'm like, that's actually really fun, something like that. Yeah. So it's all like so it's like anytime there was a fight, they'd cut, and then like the next episode they'd have a big fight, which is the board, and they'd make the board in the meantime. And I know that they had to make them in the meantime because apparently, Braden? Is that the guy's name who does that? Anyway, Brady? Something like that. I forget his name.
I'm unaware off the top of my head, so I can't say.
But yeah, no, he actually said like, oh yeah, no, I had a completely different thing planned and you guys just totally screwed it all.
That happens surprisingly often, that people just crush your plans.
Yep. He's like, if you're curious, his name's this, and he liked this, and you could and I was totally expecting this to go a completely different way. And I'm like, oh, yep. It's kind of fun when GMs like to say that kind of stuff.
Like, well, thanks.
As a GM, I get it. And a player, it's fun to do that to your GM.
It just happens that way sometimes, too. It's like, well, that happened.
Okay. We should probably move on.
Yeah. So, there are a few more topics
I'm tangenting a lot.
That's okay. We have a Kickstarter for a 1980s Ninja Turtles RPG coming back. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness.
Here's in a half shell. Turtle Power.
Which apparently was a a decent selling RPG from 1985. So very long time ago. Way before my RPG history started even. I'm an old person when it comes to RPGs. Even that's before me. So I guess is that you create your own mutant, either hero or anti-hero. You explore, adventure, discover. You kind of do the Ninja Turtles things, but maybe a little bit of the original cartoon, plus a little bit of the comic books of the first cartoon, the 1980s cartoon, a little bit of the comic books from that time period, kind of mixed together. They've got a new book.
I was supposed to say, yeah, cool. I do like the create your own mutant thing. It's kind of a fun idea. They have like some pictures, which are cool.
Yeah. And it's basically update to a lot of that stuff. I don't know how much they've like updated any kind of the rules or stuff, or if it's just like a the old rule set and it just works, because the old rule set could just work for in this case,
That's possible. Although usually I feel like things do need clarification sometimes. But yeah, I didn't find the actual Kickstarter page I was looking for, but. Here it is, but you posted it. I'm speed reading.
Did I?
Yeah, you got it already, but I'm just speed reading.
Yeah. Paldenium Books. I've heard of them as publishing. They've done some other stuff before.
Remastered text. Scanned. Oh, this is saying edited for typos and updated with new content and rules for clarification. So yeah, they are changing it.
So they basically, it's pretty much just anywhere that needs clarification or maybe, streamlined a little bit, they're updating the rules. So it's pretty much the same rules.
They're also adding some. It says updated with new content, so they're probably adding some stuff, too.
Yeah, I assume it's where it's needed, though. It's kind of like, it's mostly the same rules, but updated as needed. Updated art.
Or possibly expanding it, if they're adding, more mutant types or something, that could also be helpful.
Kind of making it easier to create a lot of different things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, it's an interesting little thing. It's an homage to the old Turtle stuff, and it's definitely an old RPG that was coming back with, especially when that was popular back in the day, so it's also a really cool idea. We're seeing something from 85 return. That's look, I'm gonna tell you that there's stuff from that time period to get a good remaster that's people like. That's something you don't always get. Take D&D stuff or other RPGs from that time period. I don't think anybody wants to remaster those. So we're at least getting
I wouldn't mind a remaster of some of the old D&D content, even if it is, not super great. It still would be fun.
True. Definitely something that would be very fun.
D&D is a little different, where it's there's actually a lot of nostalgia. There's also a lot of people who still play AD&D.
Yeah, but that's also AD&D first edition versus AD&D second edition, which also is a pretty big difference. I don't know. It's sort of I certainly could pick up first edition, but I don't know if I would play more than a one-shot for first edition at this point in time. Anyway, if you're interested in it, it's way funded, 24 days to go still, so honorable mention because it ended, and maybe they've got a bonus pledge thing, and it was really cool, and I didn't even know about this until I saw something for this, because they only talked about it this week, but I want to mention it and shout it out if you want to check it out. I'll put this in the link here. So it's a finished Kickstarter, and it's a U-boat board game with a 90 centimeter long miniature. It's a big old miniature.
It's unnecessary.
It's nearly a meter long giant miniature boat. It's just so silly. It does seem unnecessary.
Yeah, I guess you need to put there are little tokens and stuff you can put on top of it. But
apparently, you could put it's got open sides, so you can put units and stuff in the boat too, and things like that.
Yep. Yeah.
It's a 3D board that's kind of neat. Look, I'm not gonna lie, it's a neat idea.
It's a neat idea. It's funny because when you said giant 3D miniature, I'm I wonder if this is gonna be something. I don't know. I was expecting something for RPGs, and I'm oh, it's just a board game.
It's just a board game.
Plastic boat.
It's a big old plastic boat. It's a 3D plastic boat. I I thought it was neat. So I wanted. That's why I call it the honorable mention. It's and also the thing is done. So I don't know if they'll make more than the what they already have. But
yeah, because this is a collector's edition, so the boat might be only it. But you can probably get like the board game still, but the collector's edition probably not.
Yeah. So maybe you'll get the chance. Who knows? But if you want to keep an eye on that, there's the Kickstarter for keeping an eye on that kind of thing for the future. All right, we have a couple more topics to hit up for today. It was actually a pretty busy week, honestly, and Modiphius put out 2 RPG related things that I thought were interesting looking that they are publishing on their site. I do not think it's hard to tell when they actually are behind it or just publishing it. I think these are 2 just publishers. Oh, they're from Need Games, I think it looks like, is the publisher. But one here is the Fabula Ultima Atlas High Fantasy, which is to be used with, I don't know if it's used with it or its own thing, because it has new classes and fantasy, so it might be Fabula Ultima is something that already was with Need Games that I didn't really know about, and there's a new update to it. With more high fantasy, a little bit of JRPG style. So I'm going to tell you, anime style and JRPG style are 2 different things. Also, JRPG style really isn't a thing. It's truly just high fantasy RPGs. And that's another argument for the entire video game industry. Anyway, it's high fantasy RPG, the video game RPG kind of style of board game, RPG.
Yeah,
English.
It's kind of interesting how anime now is more of a art style than anything.
It's because it became kind of synonymous with the entire art style of stuff from, Japanese related stuff, and certainly it's kind of its own. That's another entire thing too to talk about for one day in the future, but not for now. And
yeah,
also,
it's really creative.
Yeah, it's neat, and it's getting more high fantasy stuff, which is always fun. And I guess if you're familiar with the previously mentioned Fabula Ultima by Need Games, and that one, which may or may not have been published. Oh, it was published. The core rulebook was published, I see. It was before. I don't know when that came out. But it was also at least published by Modiphius previously. But the other one that came out from the same company being published through Modiphius was The Breach, which involves, something happening in the 1940s, like a portals between worlds, known as The Breach. So it's a sci-fi horror game in a dystopian retro future. Supposed to take on, like, feeling of novels of the 1970s. And it is a softcover science fiction role-playing game. So it is another role-playing game. And we don't...
I really do need to start, like, running role-playing games more.
There's a lot of ones that are interesting to experiment with. Like, this one is, like, kind of neat because it's, like, supposed to be gathering that, like, 1970s sci-fi novels. It's got this interesting idea that, sure, we've probably explored it before, but honestly, they might take it in an interesting direction themselves.
Yeah, doing a thing where I make a role-playing game like once a month, like a different system.
It looks like from Need Games, Fabula Ultima was the only other one that's printed. So this is the new book from Fabula Ultima, and then The Breach, which is a new RPG done by Need Games, being published by Modiphius. Which, thank you, Modiphius. I mean, honestly, I'm always glad that they also publish a lot of these, other smaller companies. They work both as a producer and a publisher. It's one of the reasons I do enjoy Modiphius a lot. They do a good job of that. And help us with games like this. So if you want to check them out. Again, both seem really neat. I'd say if you're interested in them, and I've sold them to you, check them out. Moving on, because we still have some more topics to do. As much as I'd love to stay around for a lot of these, when it's a week that's a lot of topics, you gotta hit them all up. For this one, Renegade Game Studios is is producing a bunch of free Essence 20 PDFs, as they call them. So if you purchase an Essence 20 RPG during November, it has a bunch of free PDFs that you can get, apparently. So I guess the Essence 20 systems are their systems, I'm guessing. So if you get like a Power Rangers RPG, a G.I. Joe, Transformers, or My Little Pony product, they're offering a bunch of free stuff related to that kind of stuff. And some extra books.
There's a My Little Pony role-playing?
There's a couple.
I didn't even know there was one, although that makes complete sense.
I think that's the third one, technically. There was one that wasn't... Okay, there was the off-brand, it's not actually My Little Pony, but is My Little Pony, kind of. Then there was Tales from Equestria, which I remember because they had offered a free quick start, and I didn't have time to look at it. And the 1 week back when Joe was on the show, he looked into it and read through it, and he said, I suffered through this for you. And I was like, thank you, Joe. So that's why I remember Tales from Equestria. And now there's this one here, which is the third My Little Pony RPG. Though the other three, I haven't really heard about RPGs of modern made from them. But and those
I guarantee you there are probably a dozen more adult ones that are not official.
Probably a lot of other knockoffs. There was one that was a knockoff that was actually well done, though, but I can't remember the name of it. But I remember it existing because it was out around the same time as the Tales of Equestria, and I marked that there was... I remember the thought about there's two of these. Anyway.
I do remember there was a really good My Little Pony fighting game that got sued and then rebranded. Sued, or was it just... It might have been... But, like, it was so good that, like, a big company stepped in and was like, hey, we'll help you hire artists. We're not even going to, like, take profits and stuff. We'll help you get stuff done to make it into a new thing so it's not My Little Pony anymore because your game was so freaking good.
And the thing is, I'm pretty sure we've probably seen things, at least I know G.I. Joe Transformers have had RPGs in the past, but we haven't seen one for them or Power Rangers in the modern area for probably, like, since I've been doing this show, I haven't seen either of those. So... It's
I've seen Power Ranger-like things.
Oh, yeah.
I've not seen a G.I. Joe. I'm pretty sure I've seen a Transformers somewhere.
Well, again, like, I'm pretty sure I've heard them from, like, old days, you know, not... These are the modern ones. They've come out in the last couple of years. So if you're unaware of them, we've probably talked about them on the show here at 1.9. But I'm guessing Free Essence 20 is their system, which I didn't actually know about. That was the name of their system. Again, like, I don't always know the name of these systems, you know. I did know, it's sort of like, I know Modiphius is the 2D20 system, but there's the Essence 20 system, so, yeah. But I guess, I don't know what is free, but, you know, they're just saying that if you get some of their stuff, you get free PDFs. Maybe it's sort of like, if you get one Power Rangers book, you get another one free or something like that. Who knows? But they've got an offer for it through the month, and so that means this is a good time to get into it in November. We'll say it that way. If any of these interest you, you can get some free books, free PDFs along with it. What those PDFs are? Don't ask me. They only say free PDFs. If someone...
I do have a morbid curiosity about the My Little Pony. I don't know why. I've never seen My Little Pony. I don't care. But, like, it's like my brain just goes, like, I'm so curious. And I don't know why for this one.
Honestly, I understand that thing of you're like, what the hell do you do in, like, you
it's
question
really what
yourself.
It is, I guess, like, why? Like, what do you do? Do you make
Well,
friends?
the thing is it like a family RPG and specifically made that it tends towards a younger audience, or is it an actual, like, more just still, I would call it family friendly, but more standard RPG that just has, you know, family friendly kind of things? Because certainly you could run a probably friendly, non-violent D&D 5e game where it's all about, you know, negotiations and stuff like that, and a lot less of, like, the things, but that's just doing a dark, like, white, a wash over it there kind of thing. there's a lot of questions I've always had about those kind of ones. And I know some of them are more family-friendly and others are not, but that's also, like, depends on it. So this is one of those ones I don't know, honestly.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, if you're interested in it, free stuff, too. Now...
I'm very curious about this one.
Humble Bundle, apparently there is a thing, because I saw on the Free League Press's website, they talked about how their Dragon's Bane for Roll20, a bunch of books and stuff for it, are in part of Humble. So it turns out that on Humble, I'm going to link to that one, is a Roll20 exclusive thing of stuff for Roll20. Well, I guess books, materials, and stuff like that, maps. Like it's Cyberpunk Red, Tome of Beasts, Starfinder Core Rulebook, Star Trek Adventures Core Rulebook, Dracovin Core Set, a bunch of map bundles, some things like Alien Archives, the Beginner's Box, Tales from the Loop, Fallout role-playing game, Fate Start Bundle, a free month of Roll20. There's a lot here. There is a bunch here of stuff that is just material for Roll20. So, compendiums and extensions and all that kind of stuff that you might want, and some resources for doing a bunch of adventures. There you go. I do like shouting out a lot of times. Humbles, they do support charities and stuff. You can look at this is to support Extra Life, and
it's a very I do like that charity. Basically, kids in hospitals who basically they help entertain kids in hospitals who are there for things like cancer.
Yeah. It ends in about 6 days for this one. But if you're interested in it and you use Roll20, this is one of those ones that I might consider taking a look at a little bit more, because I do use Roll20, but I'm unsure how much of it I might need. But again, I gotta be honest, the map bundles might be helpful. I like good maps.
Let's see. Are these the map bundles? I think they are.
Well, it's also the Doom book here, too. Deep Magic from Cobalt Press. Some assets for spells from 5e. That's actually kind of nice, too.
Yeah, get all those spells in the compendium. That'd be nice.
Yeah, so you just have you can have little areas or little assets that you can use to represent spells on your boards. That's kind of nice, it's a big old circle of magic, or I see the hand there and I'm like, it's like one of the Bigsby hand spells. You can just put a thing out for it, You
also get 1 month of Plus subscription. Hey,
it's nice. So check it out. It's been a while, but we just can't get away from it. They've returned with something that I didn't know if I wanted to talk with, but I decided to because it is Munchkin related, and it's USAopoly. And Worm, it's been a while since you came back. I don't think you've faced the horrors that is USAopoly in the weird space of brand stuff that they do. Have you?
I don't know what you're talking about, so probably not.
Okay. Let me put it this way. USAopoly is kind of infamous on the show here, at very least, for the last couple of years, as they've been for having things like weird versions of Monopoly, Clue, other things they do a lot of branded stuff like that. They've also done a number of other things like Munchkin games along with Steve Jackson Games. So they've brought us Munchkin Scooby-Doo. Because that's a thing that needed a Munchkin version of it. Do you know a lot about Munchkin? You might have played with me.
I do. I played Munchkin even before I met you, so I know about Munchkin.
I thought with, like, when we did some tabletop sim. You know.
We did do some, I think, with that, but I've also played it long before that. So
Okay.
I know about it, but it's also been a while.
Oh, yeah.
But I do remember the idea. The idea is, I know, like, get to level 20.
Yeah, we'll get to level 10.
Or 10, yes,
but,
you're right.
Yeah. You get vehicles, travel from dungeon to dungeon, capturing classic monsters, and to level up to capture monsters. I'm gonna say, some of the concepts here of getting weird items and vehicles and dungeons and capturing monsters isn't necessarily bad, but it's yet again another Munchkin game. When do we need this many Munchkin games?
Probably not. I mean, I also remember when I was last on the show, there was basically just this thing where Steve Jackson was coming out with new Munchkin games like every week, and we're like, why?
They have been pretty well behaved as of late, so apparently what they've been doing a couple of times at very least is letting, like, oh hey, these people, do you want to make something for us? Oh cool, thanks. So they will let, like, let me just look. What other? They did Munchkin. A lot of branded Munchkins come through USAopoly. Harry Potter, Disney, Rick and Morty, Marvel, SpongeBob, Critical Role, and South Park were all done by USAopoly, basically in conjunction with Steve Jackson Games. But now we got Scooby-Doo.
I'm sorry, I was just looking at some of their other products and I ran into a Wednesday Ouija board. Like the show Wednesday.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, USAopoly is this weird point in time where the thing is, sometimes they do stuff that is so good. They do, like, unique board games based on these properties because they're master of having properties. Or, like,
yeah, no,
sometimes...
it seems like their big thing. I'm actually just looking at their featured brands, and it just keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically they just seem to be a company that makes deals... Okay, there you go, now it's repeating. That's how long it took to repeat. But yeah, no, it's like they apparently just seem to get brands, so they have deals with, like, Disney... So they make deals with both, and then combine them, is basically what they do.
Because, again, like, they're doing a lot of things that are technically Hasbro-owned with things like Monopoly and Clue and stuff like that. Those are Hasbro games. So they're connecting together the two. I feel like they're in this weird point of being almost, like, middle people when it comes to these kind of brands, which is an interesting place to be at. And, again, like, I feel like it switches between why the hell to... that's just kind of, whatever, it's there, to, wow, that's really great. And so it's this thing of, as much as Steve Jackson Games always disappointed me, USAopoly just gives me this, like, I shake my head and I'm like, because again, like, then we get, like, I don't know, oh God, what was some of the ones from a couple months ago that just hurt my soul? Some of the monopolies and stuff, they just choose stuff that are like, oh hey, there was, like, let me point out some of the ones from the past months. Clue for Diary of the Wimpy Kid, AC/DC Monopoly, Iron Maiden Monopoly, RuPaul's Drag Race Monopoly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is the funniest thing. Okay, so I sorted, so you can actually look up their brands. They have a list of brands, and you could look up things by brand. And they have they have a brand. One of the brands they work with is the U.S. Post Office. There's a U.S. Post Office Monopoly.
Well, they do other things, like, they do, like, I'm gonna tell you, they do Trivial Pursuits. I like the idea of a Trivial Pursuit, because it's neat. They did a D&D one, and, like, a horror one, and they did this, like, Avatar The Last Airbender board game that was really cool and good and stuff. So it's like, they oftentimes will come out with, like, oh, hey, here's a really neat thing, and then they come out with the Kool-Aid Man Jenga. I'm like, I'm sorry, USAopoly, where you're in some kind of strange situation of, like, I don't know about you. But Scooby-Doo Monopoly, or no, I'm sorry, Munchkin, they probably actually do have Scooby-Doo Monopoly. Sorry.
Okay, Probably, but apparently they have a critical role clue, which is interesting.
Yeah, they've done a lot, and so we're back. They're back at it again.
They make a critical role Munchkin.
They do. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I do check USAopoly every week. It's just that the average, it's just a clue, it's just a monopoly. It got old. But this one, it's a Munchkin, which I do like Munchkin a lot. I think they've done a lot of Munchkins over the years now, and it's maybe a little too much. But it's also this weird point in time where I'm like, I read about it and I'm like, that's actually a good brand for fucking Munchkin, the way they've done it. It didn't take a lot. This is one where you just play one of the characters and then collect random shit and capture whatever monsters are from the classic show. And I'm like, that's Munchkin, but it works. And I'm like, I think that's when it makes me the most sad about USAopoly, when they have something that I'm like, God damn it, it actually works. God damn it, USAopoly. Ah!
Yeah.
But, hey, I think that's our topics for the week. I think we hit the end of it there. It was a lot of them.
Yeah.
Do I want a deeper discussion topic? I don't know. What to talk about this week, and then I can maybe feel like if I want to pick out a deeper discussion topic after that. It was a busy week. And sometimes when these busy weeks, I don't want to spend 2 hours on the show, honestly. Like, an hour and a half is usually this show. How did Baldur's Gate go this week? We'll start with that one.
It went well. I finally got to Baldur's Gate, kind of, the outskirts at least.
It's like at the end of the game, isn't it? The last chapter. I find that, I mean, again, it's like you're in Faerun and around that region, so, I mean, it's usually mostly okay, but I do find it funny that it's so late in the game when you actually arrive for the first time.
Yeah, but it's cool. So I'm on the outskirts now. Yeah, I've been, I accepted the Dark Gift. For those who've played will understand what I mean by that.
Ooh.
Basically, my character, not even dark, I just accepted the gift. But, yeah, no, so basically, to avoid spoilers, I'm going to say, like, I'm basically playing a character who's all like, I want to collect power. So this is how I'm playing the character. I want to collect power, so I'm doing Dark Urge playthrough. I want to do the right thing, but I also want power. But also sometimes give in to my temptation, because I'm also still tempted. So that's kind of the, like, vibe I'm going for the character as I play him. Wants to do the right thing, but occasionally he'll fail. Anyway, that's how I'm having fun with it. People are like, yeah, I think so. You're like, oh, it's like, that's not a good decision. I'm like, I don't care.
Well, no, I kind of find it, like, again, well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you about this, because I had discussions with Cell about the Pathfinder games while I was playing them.
Yep.
He plays them in very certain ways.
Yeah,
and
he seems like someone who's like a very optimal gamer.
Oh, optimal, especially when it comes to that type of game. With playing through the Kingmaker and Wrath of Righteous, he played through very he's like, I never had problems with any of these things, and I'm like, good for you. I didn't play that optimally. I understand. I like the guy, but he cannot grasp my complaints about some of the things. You know, like when I was talking about it, it's sort of like it went beyond, you know, his scope, because it's outside the way he does things in the game.
Yeah, or it's like, I think you and I both like to play a character.
Yes. And we would like the game to be a certain way, and, like, you know, optimization and stuff, and I think Baldur's Gate 3, I'm just gonna say, like, is very good for that kind of thing, just for its nature and stuff, so I think that's
mean, I'll be honest, it is a fairly difficult game, all things considered. Like, I'm doing fine now. I've actually learned, and this is probably just true of D&D in general, summon as much as you freaking can. I've learned that that's probably the easiest way to move forward. It's just more action economy, and that's really what it comes down to. It's like, okay, I now have a Cambion summon, an Elemental summon, and then a Familiar summon, and then another Elemental summon, and then I have an Undead summon. And all of these apparently just last.
Well, that's the thing about 5th edition is when it breaks down to it, especially getting to high level, action economy is the most important thing. And that's something that I've learned incidentally by being a player in a lot of times with Lightning and Momo, playing with them. I've begun to understand that is the essence of 5th edition at very least. And now it does exist in older editions, but with 5th edition, how it's simplified and boiled down a lot, action economy becomes so much more important because you are not getting like those big flashy things like you would in Pathfinder or older editions where you have big abilities or big spells, or like I've set up to have like my fighter with 8 attacks, which all do this kind of thing, and set this up, as you're getting to those high levels.
One of the big things I found is just that, in a weird way, spells just, and this maybe is a good thing in some sense, but not in another, spells just don't do a ton of damage. Like, when it really comes down to it, it's like, I can blast my 5th level spell, that I just got over an area, or even like a single target one, and it's just all like, yeah, that medium strength baddie is still standing. It's like, gosh dang it,
Which I think that's the thing that's also not reflected upon, that 5th edition, honestly, at high levels is still like that. You do a bunch of damage, but it's the thing that also, like, one of the reasons that when we started gaining levels in things, in both games I was running at the time, and they both ended, in Records of Evil and Children of Wrath, I really stopped you fighting things because I started to see that, like, things were just tanky for the sake of tanky. And that's 5th edition's way of making it more difficult.
It's because if you want baddies, you need to give them a chance to take a turn. So if you can just plow them down, but at the same time, there are other ways to handle it, but it is hard. But and that's kind of why it's like, once I figured that out, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna summon a bunch of things. Although now it's really annoying when I'm doing story stuff, because this is the first time where I'm like, you know what? All of you ads, just go stand in a corner, and I'm gonna go walk around with my party. If I need you, I can bring you over.
Yes. Oh, God. Yep.
Sometimes they can get in the way of you, like, picking things up, and it's like, get out of my way!
So, let's see, did we do anything else? We didn't have... Did we have Joe's game this week?
No, we didn't, but...
That was the last week before.
No, we did. No, we did.
This was Joe's game
last weekend.
We had our 3-player session of it, which, again, I'm hoping things will work out. I like our 2 characters pretty well. Our 3rd player, not terrible, but on this kind of, like, cusp of, like, I want to know the more.
He's doing a little bit of the loner thing, which is fine, as long as he recognizes that. I think he does. I think he recognizes that, like, it's better to go along with things, but I think he's also still has a character concept that he's working through.
And he has connections with the other player who wasn't there, which doesn't help too, so it's kind of like this weird point.
Although the other player I'm also less excited about, just because I'm, like, he seems like the one who's very much he's the snowflake of that game. So I have a term, I don't know if you've heard me use it a few times. I'm a snowflake in the Crimson Queen. Where it's all like, I'm the dragon and I do the thing, and it's like, yeah, okay. Even though my character kind of sucks in terms of actual mechanics. But in that game he was all like, oh, I'm going to be playing this very specific thing that's very kind of tangential to rule, and I'm like, okay. Like, bending the rules.
Well, again, like, I feel like the one thing I can say about the Crimson Queen is your character is within the rules. It's an interesting concept of taking two...
100%, but I also have some, like, fluff that's also like, oh, it's not a class, it's a thing that my character has, Yeah. So it's like, there's a little bit where I'm bending the fluff to make the rules, whereas the other guy's bending a little bit of the rules to make the fluff, which is a little bit weirder.
Yes, but we did have the first actual episode of Crimson Queen, so if you missed that, it is up on YouTube now. I'd recommend checking it out. It was very fun. I like how we started, and I will be very honest with you. yes, you realize at this point in time, you get rid of the bad guy who's the object of your things, like the second session.
Yeah, you said to all of us that it will happen in the first chapter. I think I'm the only one that paid attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize it was like literally the first page of the first chapter.
It's like you are given this guy on a plate 3 seconds in.
Yeah, literally, we are just told, here's the guy. Go check it. Like, I'm like, oh, he's not gonna be here. We're gonna have to figure out what happened. Nope, he's just there. We're gonna have to track him down because he got wind and fled.
The thing is, like, I could have done more to add to it, but the thing is, the way that the entire original adventure is written, it is right there front and center, and there's a lot more to do. And I felt like adding the extra fluff of hunting him down when you do have this source that's like, hey, this is where they're at, is pretty important. And there is technically still a lot more to the story, the way that things set up and stuff to go, which will come about as a result of this entire thing. But it is like a very quickly opening salvo of, you're all here to get this guy, you got them, now what do we do kind of thing, which is part of the entire, I think, interesting arc of the story. So we'll see.
I think it definitely though creates a very different like character concept where it's like literally everyone's just so like, wait, okay, so our like it is a very much so what do our characters do now? Very much that. Stuff
will happen very rapidly, which will basically make that question very hard to ask. I will say that. Which is an important part of it. And I definitely already know an area, like your character with your arc, I already know kind of where you're possibly going to see kind of where you're finding your brother. You will have an option to. But basically things are going to happen that will drive the characters together and make it more difficult for you to kind of dive into looking for him once this entire thing is kind of broken apart for a little bit.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. So, it's... They're at this fishery. They've defeated his 3 compatriots. One of them died horribly because he was just a 3rd level expert. It was like you captured the rogue, you defeated the fighter, and he managed to not bleed out somehow twice.
That was hilarious, actually. I love that Mom was just all like, I hate this guy. I'm casting bleed on him, and then he's still stabilized.
The thing is, I never decided who had been the one that murdered Momo's fiancé, but certainly this is the kind of guy that would have done it, honestly. So this is a possibility. And it's kind of nebulous. I could always make it that person, or I could change my mind, we don't have that answer. The bleed then, and me rolling, I think I rolled like, well, I'll give him a stabilization check, he gets it, he's got good concentration. I rolled like an 18, sort of like, well, shit, he stabilized then. And the thing is,
he rolled into some fish guts and it plugged his wound.
It just could be like, you started him bleeding, he took a damage, he's like bleeding out slowly, it's just like, he's very tough. It's that he's a half-orc, that half-orc nature made him very hard for him to kill,
Do half-orcs have something that help them stabilize? Or is just that thing where they have extra, they can do it?
The main thing is that, like, when they drop to 0 or below, they get 1 action that they can do before they fall unconscious.
Okay, but then it also makes them start to bleed out.
Well, the thing is, any action you take that is a standard action while you are at 0 or negative technically deals you a damage.
So here you could take a swift action, like drink a potion.
Well, normally swift action is traditionally a standard action unless you have things set up on your character or feats to make it quicker. There are, like, normally it could be, like, a move action if you have, like, special, like, items. Like, there's, like, I think, like, a potion bandolier or something like that makes you can be able to drink it quickly. And then there's, like, a feat that makes you can like, swift it,
yeah, I think there was a swift feat, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, a normal player would have to spend a standard action doing it. Or standard action casting a cure spell on themselves, which they would take a damage and then heal up whatever they would. So, it's a possibility, but that guy just tried to murder you some more when he, was at that level because that's his nature. I mean, it does say under his stats that he fights to the death, but he's not dead, so...
Yeah.
Honestly, if you leave him there, he might just die anyway, because traditionally, if you're at negative hit points, even if you're stable...
You need someone to heal you.
Yeah, you do need some kind of... It's very difficult to recover from that. It can happen, but it is difficult. They have rules for that. But anyway, it was an interesting story. You checked it out. You freed a bunch of orphans. Still have to make sure they're in good shape, but still.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised there wasn't some kind of like stench condition or something in this area.
I think it could have been there, but it wasn't necessarily needed at this level because theoretically the people that were there would have been used to it and wouldn't have been suffering from it while you would have. And it would have already just been an extra negative. I think it's fine.
Which at level 1, it's already basically like, you already have enough penalties.
Yeah. If it had been like a higher level kind of thing when you were doing this, I think the stench thing would have been appropriate. But again, like, I feel like most ends...
Sickened is just -2 on everything.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of like...
What it would have been.
Yeah, I'm kind of at the point of like, we can simplify it. Like, there are literal, like, CR 1/4 spiders that are in the ship that would, like, attack you when they go by, and I'm like, screw that, they leave you alone. You can just get through that ship if you want. I'm going to tell you that now, because it's going to be at the beginning of the session of, if you go through that ship, it won't be very long, but the creatures that would have fought you in there, I just have thrown them out. If you want, I'll say that they're there, they're just not going to fight you. You want to fuck with them, go ahead.
So are these, like, tamed spiders?
No, they're just wild creatures that just moved in there.
Okay.
I'm sorry. This is something that Pathfinder does a lot. They just put things in places to have extra battles sometimes. And I don't think... It's not always needed. Yeah.
I guess, yeah. They kind of do have their... I guess they probably do that thing where it's all like, they can take a certain number of fights in a day. So
you throw some extra ones in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them are like, well, I mean, these creatures would have infested the old rickety ship. That's fine. That makes sense that they're there. But they're like, I'm sorry. Even if it's like a spider like this big, like a pretty it's still like a small spider. And it's not gonna like attack a full-sized humanoid. I mean, if you mess around with it, I can see like there's some webs in the area that look like they have really big, nasty spiders in them. If you mess with them, they'll probably attack you to defend their webs, But if you leave them alone, they'll probably leave you alone. It's sort of like, I do like that they say that there's the shark in the water, but it only attacks people if they fall in.
Yeah.
So I like that.
I say put the spiders there, but just basically be like, oh yeah, they're
that's
wrapping up some bugs.
Yeah, well, that's what I was planning on doing, is sort of like, if you mess with them, they'll do stuff, but if you leave them alone, they're not going to do anything. That was my thought for the entire thing. While if I played it as it was, they would have just attacked anyway, because everything fucking attacks you except for the shark.
Let's see.
Anyway. I also had a game on Thursday. There's Momo's Renegade. We're on the back end of that sessions, where we got to back to a city that's under attack, and apparently some people from Earth were there because the dimensions are breaking down, and everybody wants to fight these like weird, shadowy, dimensional, reptilian, dragony people or something that are trying to like destroy all universes, and so we're at war with them, and we have Dragon Friend, and we met with the important people there, and they're like, hey, we have to disable their like device which is opening the giant doom portal and allowing them to send their forces in. Go do that. And we're like, sure, cool, we'll go do that. And it's pretty easy where we're at there. It's not like a complex thing. It's the we'll go beat these people up, yay kind of thing. Like, I also like did some cool stuff where I actually did some things reasonable to my character, where I was like, because we got these, I think I mentioned previous week, we got these items that were old artifacts from gods, and I'm like, I know nothing about these things, but I'm like, I'm gonna do what because I think I took like the 5. I took a feat for 5 in the 5e, and I took the one that is I got some druid powers, so I'm like, my shaman that taught me some things, since I've got some spells, I'm gonna use some of my rituals I know to try to commune with the spirit of the axe, aka the god that blessed it. So I attempted to communicate with it, and I'm like, I'm gonna, because we learned that if we sacrifice our deity weapons, we might be able to use that as a focal point for even if we defeat the thing that's keeping it open, it's not going to close very quickly, so we're going to use that to force it closed once we've disabled the thing that's creating it in the first place, and destroyed that. So those are the steps we have to take, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry about this. I'm going to do some stuff to I don't know much about you, but I'll if there's something I can do to make up for sending off this chunk of you, cool. So I like that part of mine. I like my character. My character is the uneducated idiot. I'm not technically dumb. I learn quickly, but I know jack shit to begin with. And I like playing that, It's, I came from a tribe somewhere, and I'm thrown into, I was taken from, basically a tribe, probably, I guess it would be, someone taken from, North America as a Native American, or South America from, the Amazon, and thrown into, the Renaissance / post-Renaissance era Europe, and being good luck learning about this place, and then sent to some place that's in the future. It's been fun. I like the game even though I don't know what's going on. Hey Joe.
I'm guessing. By the way, I'm guessing it was a drain spider.
Yes, I think it's a drain spider.
Okay, because I just looked up a CR1/4 spider and I'm like, this actually could be really annoying. Because while they literally do they can do
they do poison,
most, 1 point of non-lethal damage. They have poison, which drains your strength.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing about small creatures like that they throw in sometimes. They're just meant to be an annoyance. Again, sometimes things like that work, but then there's stuff like those that I'm just you don't need to randomly fight some drain spiders that are just there.
Yeah.
There's plenty already.
How do you even heal ability drain?
There's 2 types of things. There's damage and drain. I think it's damage. Damage is heals with rest, pretty much. That's the easiest way of doing it. Or casting spells like Lesser Restoration. At higher levels, you actually do have ability drain, which doesn't heal without magic. But by the time usually you encounter ability drain, it's around things like ability and level drain around the same areas, where you have to use magic to get rid of them. It's still, the unfortunate thing about Pathfinder 1e is it's still very brutal in a lot of ways. Because it still has a lot of that 3.5 nature. It's not like it does balance out by the time you're getting a lot of these more permanent things to your character. You can get magic to undo them. But it is much later on. But also, I don't know how much of that you're going to be facing this game, because honestly, it's...
I'll say they hang around in the sewers of Corvosa, so they're kind of native to the area.
I mean, honestly, if you go down to the sewers, there's freaking Othyoks in the sewers, but that's something that people know. The sewage monsters, because they brought them there to eat the sewage and stuff, because that's what they live on. And it is known to be a fact that sometimes they escape and break into the surface and cause havoc. It has happened before. It'll happen again.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
They do actually provide me with because I like to check
random encounter table. I was betting. Yeah.
I looked at it just in case I ever wanted to use it, and some of them are the Othyok encounter does exist. I might use one of those at some point just for fun, but yeah. It'd be within the first couple of books, because then you out-level them pretty quickly, because...
I don't know, I think it'd be fun to be hey, there's an Othyok running by. Later in levels, where you're we could deal with that, or we could continue running off to the thing we're trying to get to.
Othyok's. But...
different kind of encounter.
Mm-hmm. It was a pretty decent week. If you missed the tabletop stuff I talked about, I probably should mention that, because that was something related to tabletop in my week. I talked about the Infected, which is the HMHVV virus, which is like a magic virus in Shadowrun. It creates ghouls, vampires, and like supernatural monsters like that. They're technically people infected by this magic virus, which physically and spiritually changes them. It's an entire interesting topic that has some very like dark connotations, because these people become like they require the blood of people or flesh of living things to survive, but they are just virally infected, so kind of interesting one. And another interesting but also sometimes dark topic, as I talked about, half-orcs. I did also talk about Lake Kartha on Thursday, but half-orcs have a lot of connotations about them a lot of times, so it's a topic that, oftentimes is ignored. But when you deep dive into it, you gotta bring up some of like the, bad stuff that kind of is also in part of half-orcs. Not always, sometimes. Depending on the character. And then I talked about the Disparate Alliance. I like to call it the Desperate Alliance, but it's the Disparate Alliance earlier today for Mage. I keep trying to call it the Desperate Alliance, so that's not technically true. Sometimes it is. So check those out. Some of them are still being uploaded to YouTube. Anyway, I think we've gone on long enough. We can call it today. We'll just have no deep topic today. Hey, it happens occasionally when we get a lot of news. It was a deep news week at very least. So we had a lot of interesting things to talk about, and brought us a lot of interesting conversations. Thank you for joining me, Wyrm.
Yep. Pleasure.
You want to I'll give a shout out if you talk about what your plans are for the week.
Yeah, you can find me on twitch.tv/Diamondwyrm. I will be here. I'll be on my channel tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. PDT, because that's happening tomorrow. And I should otherwise be. I've been doing evenings at 7:30 p.m. PDT. Usually Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Wednesday, I'm on. I don't know why my brain went Mr. T's channel.
I pity the fools.
Wednesday, I'm on Tantus's channel.
Mm-hmm.
Tantus's channel.
Yes.
So catch me there, and then Thursdays usually just take off. That's the day
Cool.
we grocery shopping. I'm usually pretty tired.
So as for the rest of my schedule, if you want to check it out, as I say, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays earlier in the day, I talk about Tabletop Talks, the Crimson Queen episode, Act 2, since that's what I'm calling them, episode, because I'm doing a little bit of that, the play mentality rather than the bar story mentality, which I did for Buccaneers. Will be at 9 p.m. EST, which would be 6 p.m. PST on Wednesday. The show, everything, and I'll do some gaming streams Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I should be on, theoretically next week, should be back to really the normal schedule, but I'm trying to find out if there's going to be anything interfering with that schedule tomorrow, because that's a good idea. If I ask questions to all my family members that might actually ask me to help do with stuff, and find out ahead of time, it means I have less times where I have to change my schedule at the last moment or mess things around. I'm going to try to find that out, so I can figure out my schedule a little more easily. I love my family, but they do know how to mess with my schedule a lot. Anything else to shout out? I don't know. I can't think of anything, so I'm just going to say, bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend /day /whatever, and I'll see you next time, and maybe Warren will join me, maybe someone else will join, but until those next times, bye. Yar, Joe. Yar.